Chapter 37, Defeating Half the Men of the Extreme Branch Institute. Many of the students silently moved to the side when they heard the roars of the muscular new student. "Students, please make way. I have mid-grade level E rights. I am in a rush. Students, please make way. I have mid-grade level E rights. I am in a rush." The issue of individual rights had been ingrained in everyone's heart during the 100 years of the Great Genetic Era, as it had been written into law. Of course, the issue of high individual rights was relative. A person with level E rights would not be able to enjoy much of an added convenience in society. The difficulty of obtaining level E rights mainly applied to students. Many people should have no problems obtaining level E rights after working their entire lives. However, a person could only obtain a maximum of high-grade level E rights based on how long they served in the organization. Despite that, level E rights were considered extremely high in front of a bunch of high schoolers who only had level F rights. Furthermore, the new student had mid-grade level E rights. Upgrading from level F rights to low-grade level E rights required 10 contribution points. An individual could obtain mid-grade level E rights with 50 contribution points and high-grade level E rights with 100 contribution points. Based on the current individual rights system, there were only 2 reasons that the muscular new student managed to obtain mid-grade level E rights at such a young age. The first was that his father was exceptional but had sacrificed himself in battle. Based on the regulations of the Blue Star Alliance, if a person with level D rights or above sacrificed themselves in battle, they could appoint an offspring to inherit their individual rights through a will or a relevant department in the genetic committee. Their individual rights would be inherited after it was dropped by 1 level. Of course, that was a general explanation. The specifics of right inheritance could take up an entire book. That would give him mid-grade level E rights. This possibility was also worthy of respect. Obtaining contribution points was not as simple as just nabbing a thief. What constituted a contribution? Only by contributing or sacrificing for the public, for the country, for the people, and for humanity could be considered a contribution. As contribution points represented special rights, the definition of a contribution was extremely strict. However, no matter which possibility it was, the college students who only held level F rights had to make way for the mid-grade level E rights of the muscular new student. Under such a situation, even Chai Zhao, who had come to look for Zhu Tui earlier, had to lean toward the barricade and make way. This was how important individual rights were. Thus, after the muscular new student revealed his individual rights, no one dared to flare up or cause trouble even though he was forcing his way to the front of the queue. Many students even actively made way. Occasionally, a few students moved to the side too slowly and were pushed away by the muscular new student. However, all the students could do was glare at him. They could request an apology from the muscular new student for pushing them around. After all, even though individual rights allowed a person to enjoy conveniences and special rights, they should not be used to bully others. However, there was no point in arguing in this situation. They cursed under their breaths and let the matter pass. Just like that, the students in the queue parted like the tide and allowed the muscular new student and his group to arrive at the front of the queue. At this moment, Zhu Tui had already handed his materials to the teacher and was about to be allowed into the testing venue for his examination. After handing his materials to the teacher with both hands, Zhu Tui found the time to glance at his communication device. Zhu Tui quickly turned around and smiled when he heard that. "Student, I've already handed my stuff over to the teacher. Please wait a moment." Zhu Tui did not look at the dark-skinned student. Instead, he looked at the muscular new student and said, "Student, individual rights are a right." Before the muscular teenager could say anything, move to the side. "Does Brother Yuan look like someone you can lecture?" Zhu Tui had no intention of making way. "FCAC, you're really testing my patience." The dark-skinned teen pulled his sleeves up when he saw that Zhu Tui had no intention of moving. He took action and pushed Zhu Tui to the side. The force caused Zhu Tui to stagger backward uncontrollably. His lower waist crashed onto the side of the table. Zhu Tui's face turned pale in pain as he gasped. Zhu Tui did not curse. Cursing at them now was a sign of weakness. Zhu Tui glared coldly at the dark-skinned teenager, then rubbed his waist and walked with determination to where the window was. He stood beside the muscular teenager at the front of the queue and applied strength with his legs. He forcefully squeezed the teenager out of the queue. "Make way, teacher. How long more do I have to wait for the examination?" Zhu Tui asked. The ordinary teacher who had just placed Zhu Tui's materials to the side glanced at Zhu Tui. He was put on a spot but still said, according to the sequence, "The next one would be you. It should probably take 3 to 5 minutes." The muscular teenager had been forced to the side by Zhu Tui and had a slight look of anger on his face. The dark-skinned teenager beside him added fuel to the fire. "Brother Yuan, this lad is not giving you any face. Darn you, you're really pushing it." The muscular teen, Yuan Shu, lost control of his emotion. He punched his right hand out with lightning speed and grabbed Zhu Tui by the collar. The teenager had startling strength. He raised Zhu Tui off the ground just by holding on to Zhu Tui's collar. Zhu Tui instantly found it difficult to breathe. Darn it! Zhu Tui was not a weakling either. He had probed out his right hand instantly as he was being lifted and grasped onto Yuan Shu's right hand with his fingers. More accurately, he had grasped onto the gaps between Yuan Shu's index, middle, and ring finger. He applied force. He pressed down with all his strength. Creak! Immediately, Yuan Shu let out a dull grunt. His right palm and arm were being locked up. He could not stop his body from kneeling. Zhu Tui landed on the ground. Yuan Shu had taken a kneeling position due to Zhu Tui's grasp. He was about to kneel in front of Zhu Tui. However, Yuan Shu was a powerful fighter. He took the risk of a fracture in his arm and pointed his left elbow forward. He then balled his body and pushed toward Zhu Tui. Yuan Shu was an extreme branch fighter. His push forward displayed a startling amount of power. He was much stronger than Zhu Tui in terms of power. Zhu Tui was also a fighter. He had a wealth of experience fighting in the forest during high school. Furthermore, the stalking incident and the battle with the modified human Ahu had caused Zhu Tui to undergo a fundamental transformation. He was now decisive and merciless when he did things. He would take action. If he took action, it would definitely be swift and decisive. While Yuan Shu was charging at him with his balled-up body, Zhu Tui rapidly kicked forward with his left leg. Boom! Zhu Tui's left leg connected first. It hit Yuan Shu's groin with lightning speed. Yuan Shu immediately let out a pathetic cry. His body arched forward like a shrimp as he locked his legs tightly together. His mouth was wide open, yet he could not produce a sound. He seemed to be in extreme pain. Snot and tears instantly poured out of Yuan Shu's face. Everyone froze. Everyone was dumbfounded. No one could have expected an unassuming tussle to instantly become this violent. After a momentary shock, the 3 students who had rushed forward along with Yuan Shu immediately roared with anger. "Oh, FCAC! Despicable! Use your play dirty! Attack together! Beat him up!" Wily curses rang out. The 3 students who had come forward along with Yuan Shu attacked Zhu Tui at the same time. They did so perhaps out of honor or some other reason. Chai Zhao, who was watching the show a few meters away, immediately changed his expression. He rushed forward quickly. "FCAC, Yuan Shu, do you care about your reputation or not?" The teenagers who had followed Yuan Shu did not care about these things. They raised their fists toward Zhu Tui. The high schoolers in this day and age were very powerful. Not only did they undergo intense physical training in their 3rd year, but the physical education teacher would also teach them brawling and self-defense techniques from time to time. The joint manipulation technique that Zhu Tui had used just now was something that Yu Zeping had demonstrated to them during their free time. Furthermore, students whose families could afford it would also join supplementary classes for their physical ability, brawling classes, martial arts classes, etc. The 3 people who were assaulting Zhu Tui at this moment had power and technique behind their attacks. They had obviously practiced this before. Zhu Tui would have to take a serious beating today if their attacks connected. This was what made Chai Zhao, who had been watching the ruckus, anxious. Chai Zhao was anxious. However, Zhu Tui, who was the target, was not flustered at all. When he had taken Yuan Shu down, Zhu Tui had already reached his hand into his pocket and was prepared to defend himself against his 3 underlings. It seemed as though he could not catch his breath. Chai Zhao, who had just arrived in front of Zhu Tui, looked at him. He then glanced toward the 4 people that Zhu Tui had defeated with a look of shock. It was as though the Zhu Tui that he had known before was a fake. The Zhu Tui he had known before, he always had a smile on his face and treated people with warmth. He was like a neighborly hunk. But the current Zhu Tui, he was merciless, decisive, and even a little sinister in his attack. He looked more like an experienced soldier. These few students are said to be the elites of this year's batch of new students of the Extreme Branch Institute. Yuan Shu is also rumored to be among the top 3 new students of the Extreme Branch Institute. Brother, you are impressive. You took down half of the Extreme Branch Institute alone. Chai Zhao gave Zhu Tui a thumbs up. Zhu Tui ignored Chai Zhao. Instead, he glared at Ma Zixu and his group. A soybean was jumping agilely between his fingers. Do you guys still want to take me on together? This time, I won't hit your throat. I'll aim at your eyes. I'll make your eyes explode. Zhu Tui had a cold tone in his voice. I'll even make your heads explode. He had held back just now. However, he did not intend to scare anyone with his words. An inexperienced person knew no fear. The more experienced a person was, the more cowardly he would be. He had a reason for his actions. An experienced hooligan would hold back when he was beating someone up. Their target would be beaten up a bit heavily and feel a little more pain, but their lives would not be threatened. However, if a target was beaten up by a group of young hooligans, the attackers might not hold back and kill their target. They wanted to be brutal and feel good. They would put their full force behind their attacks and did not care about the consequences. It was normal for people like these to beat their targets to death. During the years Zhu Tui had studied in Jincheng Prefecture, there had been many incidents of students beating someone else to death. Actually, no one was willing or was deliberately trying to beat someone else to death. However, who knew what would happen when everyone was hot-headed during battle? Zhu Tui had even personally witnessed a high schooler losing his life in battle in the forest. Everyone was sitting down and resting after the battle when they realized that someone had stopped breathing. Zhu Tui did not want to gamble with his life. That was why he had been so brutal just now. Of course, if the 3 of them had accidentally killed Zhu Tui just now, what awaited them was the punishment of the law. However, did that have anything to do with Zhu Tui? Even if there was, it would have been gone. Thus, when Zhu Tui took action just now, he targeted a vital point, the throat. The soybean bullet would not be fatal, but it could stop or even injure the 3 of them.